Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, I have never in my life been more excited and more ready to make people angry with a title on YouTube. Let's get it.
Yes, Tom, why Ohio State is going to beat Michigan this weekend. But a disclaimer, we will also have a show following this titled Why Michigan is Going to Beat Ohio State on Saturday. So we're going to give you the full picture of both sides and what will happen if one of these teams wins or what will likely happen. We've done this in the past where there was one year, a couple years ago, probably not last year, probably 2018 or 2019, where we spelled it out pretty precisely how Ohio State was going to win. Because back then there was no real reason to do a show how Michigan is going to win or why Michigan will win. But now the forces of the universe have made it such that Michigan could possibly win again. So we will give full treatment to both, and we'll have to make them different, Tom. And if the game is going to be won in the trenches, it's going to be difficult to make them different.
That's true. Well, yes. How Ohio State will win the game. They will block better than we think they will if they lose to Michigan. So,
that's
good
one show,
everyone. We'll see you Saturday. Pre-game starts.
Now, I saw stats from probably like PFF or something that Paris Johnson and Dwan Jones have yet to give up a sack this season.
I feel like I saw a similar stat from PFF last season before the Michigan game, too.
Now, I think you're pretty close to that. Although Paris Johnson being a guard at that point, but Thayer Munford being there are so many guards and tackles on that team. But the point being did PFF say anything about Aiden Hutchinson or David Ojabo coming back this weekend?
They did not. That feels like an important data point here in this conversation.
It does, and this game, as we have said throughout the constant coverage of it, it comes down to, almost always come down to who averages more yards per carry. And that's who controls the line of scrimmage. And we know that, but I keep coming back to the fact that I don't know if that's necessarily has to be the case this year, as long as Paris Johnson and Dwan Jones give CJ Stroud time to throw the ball. And if he has time to throw the ball, I'm not convinced this Michigan secondary is championship caliber. Like they have been made better by the lack of talented quarterbacks they've played, for one, been made better by just the defensive line getting after the quarterback and the defense as a whole getting after the quarterback and just making life miserable. But they have not faced any quarterbacks. They have not faced any receivers like what Ohio State is going to give them. And go ahead and bracket Marvin Harrison. He's not the only receiver on this team. Right.
This is a team where if you go ahead and stack up all of the wide receivers that Michigan has faced this year. Ohio State's top, Marvin Harrison is absolutely number one on the list. Emeka Egbuka might be number two on the list. And if he's not number two, he's number three. And Julian Fleming is almost certainly somewhere in the top five. Michigan didn't play anyone out of conference. And the rest of the Big Ten has just not been, there's effective units in the Big Ten, but no one really throws the ball very well in the Big Ten. So Michigan is basically untested against any kind of a competent passing attack. That was true last year as well. And if you go back and listen to our show before the game, we're saying all the same stuff. And it was, if Ohio State can protect CJ Stroud, they should be able to throw all over Michigan. Well, they really did throw all over Michigan. But they also couldn't protect CJ Stroud well enough to be able to throw enough all over Michigan. This year, they should, that Michigan's pass rush is not what it was last year. You've been tracking all season as we've done those Michigan Monday shows. Michigan is piling up incredible sack numbers in obvious passing situations. If you're staying on schedule, that pass rush has not been super effective this year. Ohio State's offensive line has struggled in the run game, in the short yardage, in the interior of the line sometimes. But the pass pro has been really solid all year long. And it feels like every week, as we're doing Michigan Monday, it's like, well, there was the one long pass completed over DJ Turner. And if Nebraska's doing that and Indiana's doing that, or whoever has done that to him this year, that feels like that's going to be a concern for them, because you can bracket Marvin Harrison. You can't bracket everyone. You don't have enough. And if you do, you're going to have about 3 guys in the box, and Ohio State's going to be able to run the ball.
Michigan didn't come down with any sacks last week against Illinois, and I believe Tommy DeVito threw the ball about 30 times in that one, if I recall. And I think the number right now is Michigan is up to 3 sacks from their defensive linemen in non-obvious passing situations, which isn't a lot. And so if they're not, if Ohio State is 2nd and 5 or 3rd and 2, like throughout the game, and 1st and 10, obviously, these are all non-obvious passing situations, and Michigan's defensive line doesn't necessarily do well in those situations, or they don't get to the quarterback enough. And Ohio State lives in those situations. They stay on track. They stay on schedule. They stay ahead of schedule. So if you've got this cloudy area for Michigan's pass rush, and that's where Ohio State lives, that means things could go pretty decently for Ohio State's passing game. And you're not going to be able to bracket Marvin Harrison all game long, unless you want to run 2 guys with him wherever he goes, because Ohio State will move him around. They'll put him in the slot. They'll put him out wide. They'll do different things with him to get him favorable matchups, and then they'll throw to him. But if Michigan wants to run 2 guys on him, even then, you're still probably going to look for him at times. And we've seen C.J. Stroud can drop a pass in between a corner and a safety. Marvin Harrison can go get it in between a corner and a safety. But I still think there are times, you mentioned DJ Turner getting beat here and there in one-on-one coverage. We've seen that each week with Marvin Harrison. They're throwing more and more to him deep down the field. And if there's no safety help over top, it's a pretty good bet that there's going to be a deep shot there. And I still expect that to happen in this one.
Yeah, I think you're going to see deep shots to Marvin Harrison. I think you're going to see a deep shot to Emeka Egbuka. I think you're going to see probably multiple deep shots to Julian Fleming, because Julian Fleming feels like teams are choosing to bracket Marvin Harrison. And if they want to try and bracket another wide receiver, cheat a safety over somewhere, it's going to be Emeka Egbuka. If you're getting someone one-on-one deep, it's going to be Julian Fleming. Odds are your most deep one-on-one opportunities are going to be to Julian Fleming. You're going to see a shot downfield to him. And this is one of these things for our bold prediction show that I think I would pick if it was something that was not something, if this was something that we had not agreed upon, like this is, not something that's going to show up in the box score, so it's going to be a pain in the butt to track. But all of Ohio State's 3 wide receivers have one pass thrown more than 35 yards in the air downfield to them at some point during the day on Saturday. That feels like something that is probably going to happen. You're going to see Ohio State test that Michigan defense deep because, much like the Michigan deep passing game on offense, you haven't really seen that happen. You really haven't seen too many teams take a shot at Michigan deep. And it feels like when they do, it's sort of been there. And Ohio State seems like they're uniquely equipped to try and test that and push that part of Michigan's defense that hasn't really been tested that much this year.
And it's funny that you say that, because I agree. It looks like it's been there. Michigan has only given up 4 passes of 40 yards or more this season. But when you have the receivers that they're facing and then the quarterbacks that they're facing, a quarterback may be able to throw that pass doesn't mean the receiver is going to be able to catch it when you look at who they have played. And when you're talking about the ranking of Ohio State's receivers in terms of Michigan opponents, like who else is there? Jaden Reed. I don't even remember if he played in that game against Michigan for Michigan State. Somebody from one of Mitchell Tinsley, maybe for Penn State. Like, no, I'm not going to put him ahead of Julian Fleming at this point in the Big Ten. Last year, he was fantastic at Western Kentucky. This year in the Big Ten, he's the guy. So I think, and we haven't even touched on Cade Stover. This is the year of the tight end after all. So I think all of those guys will be targeted, will be weapons. And I haven't really talked about the passing game to the receiver or to the running backs either. And really, that's more of a Travion Henderson thing. And I don't expect him to play much. So I don't know how much of a factor the passing game to the running backs will be outside of maybe some screen passes.
Well, I mean, you look back at last week against Maryland, and Travion Henderson looked completely ineffective in the run game and just couldn't get anything going on the ground. And that is a function of injury, I think, more than anything else. Travion Henderson did not magically become a bad running back over the span of a couple weeks. But where did Travion Henderson make his one impact in the game? First drive of the game, just a little swing pass to him. I don't think it was even a screen. I have not gone back and rewatched that game, but it was just, I think just a little swing pass to him. and he's just out in space and just makes 3 or 4 guys miss and ended up with a 30-something yard touchdown. And that's, you can't have him out there, 10 times and throw the ball to him every time. Obviously that, people pick up on that pattern pretty quickly. But if you put him out there and you throw it to him and you're using him just once or something in that situation, if you don't trust him in the ground game and don't trust that leg to hold up in the ground game, well, that's still an opportunity to maybe do that once. So we'll see. But that was something that paid off for them last week against Maryland, and it could certainly be something that you keep an eye on this week.
Let's talk about that ground game, because Ohio State beginning to run the ball pretty well of late, and I think there's some thought that, and as I just said, not expecting Travion Henderson to go this week. You didn't play Mayan Williams last week so that he would be able to play this week. So if you have Mayan Williams and Dallin Hayden, and I'm just looking, it's just caught me off guard. Dallin Hayden, 100 carries this year for 503 yards. Travion Henderson, 107 carries for 571 yards. I wonder when the last time Ohio State had 3 running backs with over 100 carries in a season. I won't scroll through here looking, but that's pretty unusual. And I think if you've got 2 of those 3 right now, the 2 that you would want are Mayan Williams and Dallin Hayden, because Henderson he was woefully ineffective last week with the injury, and Dallin Hayden just goes and gets what is there. And Mayan Williams goes and gets what is there, and sometimes he gets more. And he runs with a hardness and an energy that you can get behind. And Dallin Hayden just runs with I'm just going to go get this, and then let's do it again. And both of these guys build a confidence in the offensive line, and they see the success rate, and then they also stay on schedule. And that's where we get back to the passing game. But we're sticking here with the running game. Like, if you stay on schedule, then this offense can do whatever they want. And I think you have the 2 guys that keep them on schedule the best right now.
Yeah, if Ohio State has a day full of 2nd and 6, that is a winning day for Ohio State, because 2nd and 6, then you can run it, you can throw it, you can do whatever. We talked earlier about Michigan's pass rush being predicated on obvious passing situations. If you're constantly in 2nd and 6 and 3rd and 2, that you have 0 obvious passing situations, which means that really negates Michigan's pass rush, because Michigan, when they're not in those situations, they don't pressure the quarterback nearly as much. That means fewer turnovers. That means more time for C.J. Stroud to stand in the pocket and let those wide receivers get open. Because if you can have halfway decent corners and they can cover for 2.5 seconds, if they have to cover for 3.5 seconds, that's a big difference before that ball gets out there. And Ohio State, like you said, the 2 running backs that they are likely to have, Mayan Williams and Dallin Hayden, and we'll see on Travion Henderson, but I would expect those to be the 2 guys who have the most carries of the running backs on Saturday. Those are the guys who are the ones who are much more plow ahead, get you 4 yards, 5 yards. That's what they need on Saturday. They don't need, Ryan Day's not going to turn down a 75-yard touchdown run, but what they need is a bunch of 4s and 5s. If the median run for Ohio State, leave out the, we're not going to use the mean average. We're going to use the median average here. So you don't get skewed by the 175-yarder or whatever. If the median run for Ohio State is like 4.5 yards, something like that Ohio State wins the game, almost certainly, because if they're moving the ball on the ground like that and moving the ball consistently, that opens up everything else. And if Michigan can't throw extra resources at defending the pass, that's going to open up more stuff in that passing game too.
And it keeps coming down to a numbers game. But real quick, 2011, Ohio State had 3 running backs with 100 rushing attempts that season. Dan Herron, 133, Carlos Hyde, 106, Jordan Hall, 100. And as we know, that was a fantastic season for the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Had that important 13th data point in the Gator Bowl that year. So yes, that was a huge year. One of the most memorable for Ohio State, no doubt. How many rushing attempts did Braxton Miller have that year? Because I was
159. 159.
That was the year I was thinking. I was like, they almost certainly had 3 that year, but one of them was a quarterback. But they had 4 that year, and one of them was a quarterback.
Carlos Hyde finishes with 0 carries against Michigan and 5 against Florida to end the season in 2011. But the numbers thing is going to be interesting to watch, where how many guys does Michigan have in a box and how many guys are they sending out to defend the pass? Because if Ohio State has numbers in the box, that's where they run it. And it's going to be a difficult task for Michigan to tackle and keep everything within 2 or 3 yards of the line of scrimmage. And the defensive line does a really good job of that, however. So that is something that, well, we don't need 7 or 8 guys in the box because we've got 4 defensive linemen who are good at doing this. And Mozzie Smith, they're one of their nose tackles, one of their defensive tackles, is good at that. He's an active guy. And the Junior Colson thing that I talked about earlier in the week, where he had 2 assisted tackles of Chase Brown on Chase Brown's 30 rushing attempts last week. That is a concern to me if I was a Michigan fan. But you look at the numbers, and a lot of those tackles are made by the defensive linemen. So of course, if it doesn't get past the defensive lineman, it's not going to get to a linebacker. But also, the linebacker is allowed to go to the line of scrimmage and make some of these tackles. And so it's an odd thing. The linebackers, I've said in the past, there are issues there. And if those are your 2 designated tacklers past the line of scrimmage when you're spread out in a nickel defense, I think Ohio State has an advantage there, which sounds crazy to some to say because of Michigan's run defense. But Michigan's run defense also hasn't been spread out like this before.
Right. Again, this is the same thing. If you haven't faced a passing offense this good, that's going to force you to spread wide, play back. If you have to stay back to avoid getting hit over the top, well, that's fewer guys in the box. That's going to be you just run into a numbers problem. You can only this is the you can't double team everyone, and Ohio State is going to want to double team Mozzie Smith, which means they can't double team the defensive ends. And on the other side of the ball, Michigan is going to probably want to double team JT Tuimoloau to a certain extent, which means, well, you probably can't double team Zach Harrison, or you have to kind of pick your poison. Ohio State ran into that last year with Aiden Hutchinson and David Ajabo. Michigan's going to run into that this year with the Ohio State defense. And, Michigan's defense is going to run into that with the Ohio State offense, because Ohio State, we'll do a tail of the tape show later in the week, but I don't want to spoil the surprise, but Ohio State's skill talent is better than Michigan's skill talent, especially this week with Blake Corum not 100%, Donovan Edwards not 100%. The wide receiver units, Ohio State has Michigan fans, I'm sure, will quibble with some of what we, think about certain units. I don't think there's anyone who's going to say, actually, I think I would take Michigan's wide receivers over Ohio State's wide receivers. Like that's going to be the one free space on the bingo card for everyone. And that is going to be, you're going to want to double Marvin Harrison. You're going to double Emeka Egbuka. Well, who are you going to put on? Who are you going to put on Cade Stover? Who are you going to, if you have a running back coming out of the backfield, if you're going to have to play the safeties back, you run out of numbers at some point. You can't play with 13 guys. So yeah, it does feel like Michigan's going to run into a numbers problem at a certain point. Again, though, this is all predicated on Ohio State being able to run the ball, and Ohio State being able to run the ball is really predicated on Ohio State being able to throw the ball. It's sort of the inverse of the old run to set up the pass. Ohio State may have to pass to set up the run a little bit, but I think they'll be able to pass, which means I think they'll be able to set up the run, which means I think they'll be able to run, which means I think they'll be able to pass.
Makes sense to me, Tom. Which should scare you. The passing game, the running game, getting Mayan Williams back, having him rested, and for me, Dallin Hayden rushing against a nickel defense seems to allow for more of what he does, and that's just go get yards, make a cut, and go. Get the ball, cut, and go. And yet we've seen Ohio State stop the run in nickel, so it's not just something that, you've got the numbers, so it's automatically going to be effective. You still have to obviously execute. And this is going to be one of those games where Ohio State, the energy and the desire will be unmatched, at least in terms of what they have done this season. The other side of the ball for the Michigan running game, you mentioned Blake Corum. There's no way he's going to be 100%. And if he plays, it might be a detriment to Michigan. Or, because this whole, it's inspiring. Look how inspiring it is. It's inspiring us. Well, it only inspires you through so many 3 and outs. So, like, if he's not effective in running the ball, how long can they stay with him?
Well, it's a little bit like Willis Reed in the 1970 NBA Finals, where Willis Reed goes out injured and limps out on the court to start the game, and then like plays, I think, 3 minutes or something like that of that game, and it inspired the Knicks to beat the Lakers and yada yada yada. And okay, I don't think that's going to be what decides this game. And, you have people on both sides saying very definitively he's absolutely not playing, or he's absolutely playing, or he's medically cleared to play, or he's, I think based on what we've heard, it sounds like he's, maybe could go, and, they'll see how it goes during the course of the week. And yeah, we'll see how it looks on Saturday. But the one thing that I think you can say with 100% certainty is he's not going to be 100%. He's not going to be close to 100%. And if it's something where he can't cut and he doesn't have the power in his legs that he normally does to kind of push that pile and move that thing forward, that's what he does. That is what he does. Blake Corum would be like the perfect running back for the Ohio State offense, because he is, we talked about the median run. What is Blake Corum's median run this year? I'm going to guess it's about 5 yards, give or take. I mean, he doesn't get stopped in the backfield very much when he's healthy. He doesn't get stopped for 1 or 2 yards very much when he's healthy. He feels like he's at that 4 or 5 yards. He's like the perfect back for the Ohio State offense this year. Unfortunately, that's not who he's going to be on Saturday, I don't think. And then Donovan Edwards, he's been banged up. He's missed a few games in a row. Is he back this weekend? People will tell you yes. We'll see how that goes. But, I'm not expecting Corum to be able to be a major contributor on Saturday. So to me, this game kind of comes down to how much can Donovan Edwards go and how healthy is Donovan Edwards? Because he's a solid running back. He also gives you something out of the backfield in terms of that passing game that is, the big playability they don't really have in a lot of other places. If Donovan Edwards can go, that's a huge plus for Michigan. If you're seeing CJ Stokes getting 10 first half carries, like, I have bad news, friends in Michigan, that you are probably not winning that football game if CJ Stokes is your starting running back or your majority of your carries running back. I don't think Michigan can win the game if that's the case. And it's a real possibility that he's that guy, because and if he is the starting running back, Tony, what are the odds that JJ McCarthy leads the team in rushes this weekend?
Well, yeah, in rushes, yeah, probably, especially with some sacks thrown in, because the Ohio State defense probably won't be respecting the run as much. No reason to expect the run as much with CJ Stokes in there, and so you get after everybody a little bit more, and you can get in there on some play actions as well. Looking at Donovan Edwards, he did not play against Illinois. Carried the ball twice against Nebraska when he was already hurt, so I don't know if he hurt himself more or they just realized, okay, he's not good to go. Before that, at Rutgers, 15 carries, 109 yards. Week before that, 10 carries for 42 yards. Week before that, 16 for 173 against Penn State. You look at what he did against Penn State, but that was so long ago, and the information coming out of Michigan, it's hard to believe anything, and it's all very quiet, and, even if they have both Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards back, we have no idea what they're able to do. We have seen Mayan Williams return from injury and be just as effective. Like, I'm expecting an effective Mayan Williams on Saturday. I don't know that I'm expecting an effective Donovan Edwards. I'm expecting a dangerous Donovan Edwards, because if he's good enough to play, he's good enough to make plays. But I would expect the Mayan Williams that we saw a couple of weeks ago, where he came back, he was hurt, and he was still running hard and making plays and hitting people. I don't know that I expect that same thing from Donovan Edwards.
Well, I think you're also likely to see more Mayan Williams than Donovan Edwards, I think. Mayan Williams, if Mayan Williams is good to go, I think they're going to run Mayan Williams as hard and as long as they can. Donovan Edwards, maybe. He has not been that bell cow back for Michigan this year. That's been Corum, and Edwards has been sort of supplemental. Do they feel like he can hold up for 20, 25 carries? I don't know that they do. I mean, how many times has he had 20 carries this year? At all?
None.
15 against Penn State, and that was a game where Michigan was just running the ball all over Penn State all day long, and hit a couple big ones there. I think both Corum and Edwards both had 60-yard touchdowns in that one. but I don't know if they feel like they can give Donovan Edwards more than 10, 12 carries. Because if you've been out that long, we talked about that with TreVeyon Henderson coming back last week. One of the big reasons Ohio State wanted to bring TreVeyon Henderson back for the Maryland game was kind of knock some of that rust off. If you've been out that long, are you on your run tracks? Are you up to game speed? All that kind of stuff. Because this is not the game where you want to get off to a slow start and gotta kind of knock the rust off in the first quarter. Like this is not Rutgers. This is not Indiana. You got to kind of hit the ground running. Because if Michigan falls behind early in this game, especially if they fall behind, you get a couple quick 3 and outs if the running game's not quite there yet. And hey, you got some big game nerves for JJ McCarthy, and okay, you get a couple early 3 and outs. If Ohio State's up 10-0, 14-0 on Michigan. Michigan's in a not great spot at that point. This is Michigan. Ohio State is probably built much more to come from behind than Michigan is. Michigan is built, at least at full strength. Michigan is built to kill a lead, to kill a game with a lead much more than they are to come back from behind. So, and, I think Michigan is going to want to shorten this game as much as possible, keep the chains moving, get Ohio State 10 possessions, 11 possessions, rather than a 13, 14 possession game. The more possessions Ohio State has, the better it's going to go for Ohio State, I think. And the fewer possessions Ohio State has, the better it's going to go for Michigan. But if Michigan is behind, I don't know if you can kind of try and take the air out of the ball that same way, especially once you get into the second half.
Michigan wants to win the time of possession battle because that means Ohio State won't have the ball. And to do that, they're going to have to complete some passes with JJ McCarthy. If the running game isn't as effective, then you're going to have to get those first downs somewhere. And talked about this a little bit on the Michigan Monday podcast. They picked up more first downs via the air than the run last week, which was just the second time this year they've done that. And last year, and they did it 7 times with Cade McNamara, and this year just twice. And so the moving of the sticks, the keeping of the football is going to be paramount for Michigan, but it's not something they've shown that they can do through the air regularly. And that's where there's another issue here, because if the running game is bad, you need the passing game to be better than it has been all season. And is there reason to expect the passing game to be better than it has been all season? No, because now you're playing the best defense you've seen. You're playing in a hostile environment. This is the first time that probably any meaningful member of the Michigan offense is going to be in Ohio Stadium, and everything is on the line, and now you need to execute better than you have at any point this season. And that's a tough ask for a Michigan passing game that has been kind of hidden, basically, and not hidden in a sneaky gotcha way, hidden like we don't want people to see this. This is like hidden like a 50s pregnant girl, like sent away to a farm.
Yeah, they have acted a lot this season like they don't trust JJ McCarthy fully. And he's not, he has not thrown a ton of interceptions, but he's had a bunch of games this year where we've watched, and it's first and goal, and he's throwing a contested ball into the end zone, and it's incomplete, and it's not intercepted, but it's like, why would you make that throw? Like, the decision making is just it's someone who has very clearly been the best player on the field for as long as he can remember, and has always been able to do this. And now you're at a level where sometimes you can't do it. And I think he's sort of starting to figure that out and making fewer of those throws. But, if Corum's banged up, Edwards is banged up, more of the, is this a game where JJ McCarthy walks into the stadium feeling like I have to win this game today? He has the speed, he has the arm strength to, if the throws downfield are accurate, and, he can do that. But also, if he's the way we've seen him at times in the past, where the downfield passes, like they have made a real attempt to throw downfield, it just has not happened. And, maybe this has been one really elaborate long con where JJ McCarthy's going to be dropping dimes downfield all the game Saturday, but that does not feel like the most likely explanation. It feels like maybe Michigan's receivers aren't getting that open, and, unless it feels like every time you see him throw a ball to someone downfield and it's completed, it's, hey, Ronnie Bell is there, and there's literally no one from the defense around him. Like, he can make that throw. All the contested ones, either the ball's 6 yards overthrown, or he hits one on the spot, and Andrew Anthony can't catch it. I mean, it's like you've got, whether it's the quarterback, whether the running, it's the wide receiver. It hasn't happened for them this year, and I think if I was a Michigan fan going into this game, my big concern would be that Michigan's big strength has been, the offensive line, which is still going to be there, and then the running backs who can kind of keep the chains moving and just be efficient. Not necessarily explosive, but efficient. Both of those running backs are a little bit compromised this week, so how much is that going to compromise the Michigan running game? And then the advantage that Michigan would have potentially in the passing game is Ohio State has been vulnerable to those deep downfield passes once, twice a game. It feels like every week they get hit with one of those downfield passes. Can Michigan execute those, or is that going to be someone's open and J.J. McCarthy overthrows them by 5 yards? It feels like they're going to get them. Michigan will get Ohio State once downfield. If they can get them 3 times downfield, that's very different than if it's once or not at all.
Yeah, the Michigan passing game, they got Kool-Aid, they got no sugar, and you got peanut butter, ain't got no jelly. It's just both things have yet to be there for them with receivers and the passing game and the quarterback. Special teams, I feel like, are a wash in this one. I don't know that anybody really has a significant advantage in the special teams, but I think that's going to wrap it up. Tom, do you have anything else about why Ohio State is going to beat Michigan on Saturday?
Do you want to give what is the wildest, craziest pro-Ohio State, everything goes right scenario? I mean, do you want to, how big? Because I think this is a close game, but I think we could do this for both teams. Because, the close game, I think everyone can kind of picture. Like, what is the everything snowballs on Michigan? And it's, the 2015 game where they just, they came in thinking, aha, it's going to be, or the 2018 game, they came in thinking, aha, this is our year. And then everything snowballs and they just get clobbered. What does that look like?
I think to me that looks like Ohio State scoring 7 touchdowns on offense and another defensive score, or putting the defense gets a turnover, puts the offense in an easy position for another score. Because if Ohio State is throwing the ball and Michigan is outnumbered on the line of scrimmage and they're able to run the ball, then what is the difference between Michigan and any other team Ohio State has played this year at home, when the secondary skill is not as good as Penn State's, I would argue. And so if they're not able to stop the run, stop the pass, why wouldn't Ohio State put up what you would normally expect them to put up against anybody else in the Big Ten?
I don't think I see Ohio State getting into the 50s. I could see, I think Michigan's going to be able to do enough to hold the ball enough that, what is Michigan on a bad day? What does Michigan get to? 17, 20? I mean, maybe 14,
16,
17. Yeah, 16, 17, something like that. I think you're maybe looking more like a 2015 game where it's, in the low 40s to 16, 17, something like that, where, I don't see Ohio State scoring 7 offensive touchdowns. I think that would be very surprising to me. I think it's more, they get out early. Michigan has trouble. Michigan becomes one-dimensional. J.J. McCarthy, you can only run J.J. McCarthy so much because he's gonna get pounded in the running game if you run him. And then if he goes out, then Michigan really is, that's where it really spirals. If J.J. McCarthy goes out, then you've got, then we do get to see what it would have been like to see Dan Filari quarterbacking Michigan in 2020. It feels like it's probably, Ohio State scores a little bit early. Michigan gets behind. They have to get one-dimensional. They can't execute in the passing game. And, Ohio State probably, say 40, you get one turnover late, 42 to 17, 45, 17. That's probably the realistic, to me, best case scenario for Ohio State on Saturday.
Now, you referenced that 2015 game. In 2014, did Jim Harbaugh or anybody have anything to say about Urban Meyer being born on third base, or was J.T. Barrett at a Heisman ceremony where Desmond Howard ripped J.T. Barrett's offensive line, or was that just recently involving this current Ohio State team?
Yeah, that's the thing. I have been going back and forth all week on who's going to win this game and changed my mind on, because you've got the team that wins in the trenches wins the game every year. And I really think Michigan's offensive line is the best of the 4 lines. But also you look back at the history of teams that have beaten Ohio State and how it's gone for them the next week or the next time they've played. And it has generally gone very poorly. And it's like one of these historical trends is going to really, really get shattered on Saturday. And if it gets rolling, I don't get the feeling Ryan Day is going to be pumping the brakes. So, if Ryan Day does get a chance to hang, pick a number, they're not going to score 100, but if Ryan Day gets a chance to hang half 100, he will probably do it. I don't think they're going to do it, but, they've, you saw Michigan throw the ball deep against Michigan State towards the end of that game, right? Am I remembering that right? Yeah. You might, if Ryan Day has the opportunity to do that, I don't know that Ryan Day will pass up the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But again, that's Ohio State's dream at that point, to be like, all right, now let's score some angry points and just really put it in there. But that will do it. I will also say Michigan's offensive line has been banged up as well. So, let's keep that in mind. But that will do it for this episode. And we told you every reason why Ohio State is going to beat Michigan on Saturday. Up next in your podcast platform, if you're just listening to this in a playlist, why Michigan is going to beat Ohio State. And we will need to have 15 disclaimers on the next show so that we just don't get constant downvotes. So
I'm going to definitely put the word guaranteed in the title, but I may put an asterisk on it for both of these. Why Ohio State is going to beat Michigan. Guaranteed. Asterisk.
6-star lock. Anyway, that will do it for us. As always, find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Become a member, say hello, talk Ohio State and Michigan there until your heart is content. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and give us a thumbs up on that. Go ahead and subscribe, hit the bell to be notified. We would appreciate that. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you later.